Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I'm your host, Wendy Nystrom, with both co-hosts today, Joy Langford and Joel Vendette. And today's special guest is Mr. Thomas Small. He is the founder of Culver City Forward. So welcome back, Thomas.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you here again. We have a lot to talk about.
We do, and what I love talking, because guys, we always talk a little bit beforehand and we kind of chat about what we're going to discuss today. Definitely focusing a lot about housing and what Culver's doing, but Culver City Forward has a program called Culver City Bounces Forward. And Thomas, I would love for you to explain to people what the Culver City Bounce Forward program is.
Well, it's a project that we're just in the process now of completing kind of the first stage of it. And it started during COVID. It was kind of our reaction to the COVID crisis. But what we wanted to do was study what Culver City could do to not just recover from the crisis, but actually to take advantage of what's more plastic, what is more changeable during a crisis, and to be able to actually have the city bounce forward out of the crisis and be in a better position than it was before. And this is one of a number of projects that I've done in partnership with the RAND Corporation. So it's always fascinating to work with this team at RAND. My colleague Robert Lempert there is one of the scientists, one of the climate scientists, and he's part of the IPCC actually he was one of the lead authors on the last couple of IPCC reports on climate change. And he was part of the Nobel Prize winning team when they won the Nobel Peace Prize with Al Gore a number of years ago with the IPCC. So he's the only Nobel Prize winning guy that I get to work with regularly. So it's always a pleasure. But we did a lot of public outreach and had more than a dozen meetings with different stakeholder groups throughout the city to envision what the community wants for the future of the city. And so it was kind of, we also, when I was mayor in Culver City, I started the general plan update that the city is still in the process of completing. So we were kind of in parallel with the general plan update. And going through that general plan process, I kind of learned how, we had a lot of excitement about it. Doing the RFP for that process was an incredibly exciting thing because Culver City is kind of this very special place because we have, Amazon and Apple and TikTok and Warner Brothers and HBO and Sony sort of driving our economy. And so it's really being a small place of only 40,000 people, that having these pressures there, which are wonderful pressures. It's wonderful to have this economic engine of the tech market and the media market here in Culver City, but it also creates problems, particularly in housing, Wendy, as you described. So when we were doing the RFP for the general plan update, we really got attention from as far away as Copenhagen, of teams wanting to help us with this process, teams of designers and researchers. And so there was a lot of excitement around the RFP, but when you get into the general plan itself, you sort of realize that it's to some degree in this country, in California, the general plan is kind of an outmoded tool. It doesn't really, it's not really going to solve our housing problem. It can help, but we needed more. And that was sort of why we decided to do the Culver City Bounce Forward project in part.
So what are some of the breakdowns of some of the bullet points of what exactly the program does? As it relates to housing? What are some of the goals?
It's a great question. What it does is what Culver City Bounce Forward offers is a kind of it's in two parts. We built it with, it's as a, we wanted to, in the past, and often when I worked with Rand, you publish your results, in a white paper, and then you have meetings and presentations with the community and stakeholders and the city council and so on, and you tell them your results and your recommendations. This time, we wanted to reach a broader public. So we did kind of what you guys are doing in that we built a standalone website for Culver City Bounce Forward. And we've got it to a certain stage, but I'm still revising it. So I haven't made the website public yet. But the website, the program it offers is kind of in two parts. One part is an illustration of kind of a decision-making process that the community can go through, and this is a decision-making process that's kind of been developed by Rand and other institutions around the world, called decision-making under deep uncertainty. So it helps you make decisions when you don't necessarily have the information in the future. In fact, Joy, you'll find it very interesting. It's used a lot in water research, this process. For example, if you want to, if you need to figure out what infrastructure you need for the Colorado River Basin for the future, which is a key thing for water throughout the entire western part of the country, how can you predict, particularly in the face of climate change, how much precipitation there's going to be in any year or on any day, 20 years from now, which is what you need to know if you're going to know how to deal with your dams, with your aqueducts and so on. So what decision making under deep uncertainty does is, rather than making a comprehensive plan, as we usually do in planning processes, you make a whole bunch of what we'd call exploratory plans. And then so you can and this is with the advent of computers that you can do this. You can say, 10 years from now, how much is it going to rain? As we know today, you never know what the weather is going to be. But so rather than trying to predict that, you make a whole set of predictions, a whole range of them, and then you can then you take that data and you kind of bump it up against each other, and you make the decision that works for the largest range of possibilities. So we wanted to adapt this process for urban planning for the city, and so that's what one part of the website does. And it's very visual, because it's very hard to keep people's attention when it's just text. So the website is very visual. It does this with illustrations, with graphs, with charts, kind of like you see in the newer New York Times articles, where it's on a big scroll and it moves and gives you information in a visual way. Then the other part, which I'm getting tremendous attention for is what we call a digital twin. And a digital twin, this I think is going to change the future of urban planning, and particularly is going to be useful in addressing our housing problems. Joel, I think you'll find this really fascinating. That a digital twin, it's kind of like, it's a digital, three-dimensional digital model of the city, or it can be a three-dimensional digital model of anything. They use it a lot in warehouses, and in other types of construction, but it's really just beginning to be done for entire cities. So it looks kind of like, if you've been on Google Earth, and as I'm learning about this, apparently Google Earth used to be better than it is now. That Google has not put as many resources into it as they used to. But if you look on Google Earth, it's kind of, you can kind of fly through a city or a park or anywhere, and in 3 dimensions, and look at it. So it looks kind of like that, but what it does is it has the data attached, the data streams attached to every object in it. So you can click on a building and you can see, what was the water usage for this building last year? What was the water usage for this building last week? How many people are there right now? How many cars go in and out? How is it connected to the transportation system? How much electricity is it using? What's its walk score? who are the owners, what is the business there, it can connect to Zillow, how much did it sell for, what's its value, all that
So
kind
would
of thing.
that information mostly be used by the city? I know a lot of people would kind of be like, wow, that's pretty kind of intrusive.
But data is the way to go now. Everyone is collecting as much data as possible to find out what we're using. Therefore, how do we get to our goals? I mean,
that's true.
And the thing that makes it possible, it is intrusive, and you do have to be careful of that, and you have to be careful, so we're having to be very careful about how we structure it, and and what data is public and what data is private to the owners. But a lot of these data streams are out there already, so we're just connecting them and sort of aggregating them into this digital twin. So
there is no privacy anymore.
No, there definitely isn't. And like, I own 3 units in Culver City, and every year they're asking me what my rent rolls are, which my rent rolls are pretty inexpensive. I don't believe in gouging people to live in a nice area, but all of that they're compiling to figure out, should we charge a person excess taxes, or, what should be going on? So that's the only reason why I was mentioning that part.
That's a good point, though. I mean, I'm only thinking of the scientific data aspect. I wasn't thinking about the taxes aspect.
Yeah, or just city fees that are associated with, trying to own in this wonderful area that you're building up, which is Culver City.
There's definitely complexity to it, and it's not something that you can develop overnight. It's taking us time to refine it, to get it going, and to there's so much data that you have to be. It has to be sort of, what word can I use? It has to be sort of lightened or streamlined so that it'll work on a browser. But the most powerful thing I think about it for the future is that when you combine the digital twin, so if you imagine this digital twin, that you're really seeing, the city, the world, and all the data in it on your screen, in 3 dimensions. But when you combine it with the new AI that we're having, that we're hearing so much about now, what it can do is it can make projections into the future. So you could say, what if we need 3,000 more housing units in Culver City? What's that going to look like, and where would it be? So if we say, okay, well, if you take this old industrial, that's commercial area by the creek, and we change the zoning to allow housing there, and we raise the height limit from 2 stories to 4 stories, how many units would that create? And what would it look like? And what shadows would it cast? What views would it block? How much energy is it going to use? How is it going to be connected to the transportation system? What is it going to do to the circulation of cars? And so it can actually envision that. And I where I get so excited about it is as an outreach tool, because when I've talked to the public in our general plan process, it's like, when you use sort of traditional architecture illustrations, the purple blocks of buildings, it's like people's eyes glaze over. And but to actually see something and be able to walk around it virtually, I think will make it and then you'll also be able to see how much better it can make things, that if you're developing something, because people don't want what they don't understand, and they're afraid of change. But if you can demonstrate in that environment that there would be like restaurants and shops there, and I could walk there, and then the creek would have this new park by it, and it would be green, and there would be grass, and and trees and benches, and I could walk there from my house, and I could take my dogs, and then it becomes much less intimidating, and it becomes something that I hope people can welcome. It can be a way of envisioning the city in a positive way.
Absolutely.
So
really?
so I'm
No, I love the idea and I love it, but I'm seeing Joel is about to blow a gasket. So Joel, I really want to know your mind.
Because honestly, I'm finding some of this very funny because it's like, I love the concept of planning for the future, yada, yada, yada. I think that's all great. But I look at the key example, which I'm going to just say there was no planning done, is look at what happened when the 405 was widened. The great whole thing was, oh, this is going to ease traffic. We're going to have more, more lanes. And it's worse than it was before. So I'm like, so part of me takes a lot of this with a grain of salt. And then I think about other areas, whether it's like Playa Vista. It was all built on the same thing about people being able to live and work in one area. It's not affordable. So I love the plans that I'm hearing, but I'm not hearing how is this going to be affordable for people? Because that, when you talk about the corporations like Sony, Amazon, Facebook, TikTok, these are multi-billion-dollar corporations coming in. How is this going to be affordable for the people who are there now? Because it's great that we're talking down the future, and it's great to say, oh, this is going to be something for people to look at. What's the time frame? Because people are hurting now. Like how, and this is not surprising at all as these corporations are moving in, that the costs are so high for people. So I love the concept. I think it's fantastic. It's not addressing the issues at hand now. And I don't understand how anything is going to be in a timely manner because we all know bureaucracies, nothing happens fast. It just doesn't. So how do we actually do something that's going to help people now or in the near future?
Joel, you're so right. And the that is absolutely the challenge because you do have to plan for the future. But the best laid plans of mice and men, it's like you can plan all you want, I have to say that.
Let's look at, so really quick. So let's look at the public transportation issue, because I know that's going to be a big component for things. In the past couple of months, there was an article in the LA Times talking about ridership is dropping because of the rampant drug use and crime that is happening on the public transport, on the subway system. How on earth are people honestly expected to use the public transportation that they're not safe on? And so
well, that portion is a question for the metro people. They've been on KTLA.
I think this is all, but it's all intertwined. It's like, it's great that we're talking about building these hubs that public transportation people can walk to. One, are they affordable? If not, how are people supposed to get to and from them without being in their cars? Then how are we going to address the roadway system? And are we going to do public transportation? Great, we need money for that to monitor it. So I'm trying to figure out, there's so many layers to this. Like, how are they all being addressed at the same time? Because really they have to be successful.
Well, that's what I think the digital twin platform can do better than anything that we've developed in the past. Is it can enable you to, in a comprehensive way, see how all of those things interact with each other. Okay. But you're so right about how it can't happen fast enough. I think this thing is a great tool. I think it is going to change how we plan for the future. But you're right that stuff is happening right now. And I have the same conversation. I mean, it's in one sense, it's kind of wonderful that when I go to funders, to Apple or Amazon, and talk to them about how they're going to participate in this community, that I get the same response that you're giving, Joel, is like, well, let's do, what are we doing right now? So there are things that are happening right now. I think we're building 90 some units of affordable housing. And it's at different levels, but the different levels of affordability. But the whole project is affordable. But that will be on the grounds of the Culver Palms Church on Sepulveda, and so Apple has helped invest in that project, which is fantastic to have them. But they need to see that it's happening right now, and that's hard to do and limited. But so those 90 some units will be fantastic. It'll be one of the first projects of its type in Culver City, or one of the larger ones of its type. Really and it's happening soon.
Sorry to interrupt,
but it's not enough.
When somebody says affordable, I always want to know, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. There's a whole
affordable housing
of still that ends up to be semi-affordable for some. Yeah. But there's a whole calculation. I don't know if you know that calculation, Thomas, but he'd agree with me that
I think
Yeah,
at
no,
that
I
point,
can,
like,
I can
that's
just,
why whenever I hear like the word affordable, I'm like going, oh, that's adorable, because I'm just
well,
like,
I
it
can,
means too much for anybody. It's too
I
big.
can describe it I can describe it in broad strokes. What the way they calculate it is as a percentage of the average median income. So that if your income is, 50% of the average median income, and then you qualify for housing at an affordable level that is subsidized housing, and then different percentages up, from a very low income to the average income to above the average income, depending on what type of housing. It's called, extremely affordable, and then workforce. So these things are very, very strictly calculated. When it comes to building what is defined as affordable housing.
It's just funny to me because, like, when you're talking about the median income, but now you're talking about multi-billion-dollar corporations coming in with people making hundreds of $1,000s a year, the median income is skewed.
Yeah,
So that's why
that
when
is an
somebody says
issue. Yeah,
affordable, I always want to push back on that, because I'm like, we have to look at the reality, which is you're going to have the people who've been in Culver City for generations that are now, living on $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year, maybe. So, but now the median income, you're looking at hundreds of thousands, people making hundreds of thousands, if not a lot more, moving in. We have now skewed those numbers. So when you talk about affordability, it's now being skewed up higher. But the people that are on the lower realm are not able to catch up. So that's where I always get flustered, for lack of a better word, when I hear affordable.
Yeah, no, you have to, and it's complex. It's too complex. I mean, I'm sure you guys have probably heard about the biggest kind of explosion that's happened in the affordable housing, and we sometimes refer to it as the affordable industrial affordable housing complex, because it's how these things are funded is so incredibly complex and arcane that the whole system is challenging. But the big explosion has been the demise of the Skid Row Housing Trust, which has been viewed as one of the most successful affordable housing institutions for many years, but there hasn't been enough money for it. Certainly there was mismanagement, and the whole thing has collapsed, and it's really sending shockwaves through the system. There was a panel the other day at the West Side Urban Forum last week on the new Measure ULA that passed in the last election, that is putting collecting more billions to put into the affordable housing system. But it's so complex that it's the mansion tax, where they'll be taxing, it's somewhat parallel to the real estate transfer tax that we have here in Culver City, but it's even more complex what they've done in LA. And it's specifically to pay for affordable housing and homeless services.
They just
But
reduced
the
that.
way that it
Didn't they just
sorry?
did a major reduction in the estimate on the amount of funds that they were going to get from ULA.
Yeah, and everyone's, all the mansions are scrambling around to figure out how to avoid the tax. And there's an argument.
There have been a lot of sales of mansions. People are just leaving before this is enacted.
Exactly, before it's enacted in April, people are trying to sell as quickly as possible, and the way the tax is structured, there's some question as to whether it's actually going to help us build affordable housing or not, because it also taxes the tax also falls on large multifamily projects. So you're so it's making them more expensive to build, which may discourage some people from building it. So it really is, it's a hard nut to crack. And it's going to take a while. I am super impressed as how much Mayor Karen Bass has focused her administration completely on these issues.
Yeah.
I was in the mayor's office last week, and there is definitely a sense of this being an emergency. The homeless and housing issue.
No, she's taking it very
and
seriously.
and
She is acting quickly.
yeah. And Joel, you're so right that it affects everything. The way that it's affecting that these issues are affecting transit is horrendous. And I thought that article in the Times was somewhat exploitative. And if you look at it, but we talked about this, and I did a panel with the Urban Land Institute last week on private development and public transit, where we talked about where I had three of the major developers, one of them who was developing the Apple campus here in Culver City, and asking them, the question really was, public transit is not working exactly as you referred to, and as that article depicted graphically. So the question is, so the government. Yeah, and we're not being successful on the government side, even though we are keeping investing. And so my question to the developers was, we need this now more than ever. You need this to make your businesses work, because we have traffic congestion, and so how can private development help this? And interestingly, one of the sustainability experts responded. Her response was, well, if you really look at it, yes, the public transit is dangerous, but driving your car, if you look at the numbers, far more people are killed in cars.
That doesn't register with most people. That's not a
exactly. But most people, it doesn't register with people. That's still not going to make you get on the yeah, it's not going to get on the train when it's scary on the train. And so all these things are linked together.
Oh yeah, and then it's going to get even trickier because they just announced the massive insurance rate hikes that are going to be coming down to every California driver.
And they're exorbitant. Your car insurance is definitely you're going to feel it. That along with the cost of gas, and even with electric cars these days. Fortunately, I'm grandfathered in, but I was in an Uber Tesla the other day, and he says when he goes to the supercharger, it's $49 for him to fill up on electricity as opposed to doing it at home. So, I mean, one way or another, that was supposed to be one of the great things of having electric cars. I'm working on the hydrogen hub right now with the governor's office. We're all looking for better ways to make transport.
I'm a hydrogen gal. You should have called me.
I'm telling you, it's a huge project. So money is coming down from the DOE, but we have to figure out, how to translate it, which, Thomas, we have to have one just on Metro. We have to have you with one on Metro.
Absolutely.
You have a stellar project right there off of Venice and what is that, National? There's a Metro hub that's brand new and built, and there's so much to talk about around it. But there are going to be some things in the near future that come down regarding how we all change our transportation habits.
Yeah.
And as go ahead, Thomas. Sorry.
Oh, I just before we get to the end, because I know our time is running out. I just wanted to mention one of the things that we are working on that is exciting, I think, on all of these fronts, is we made a trip, a group of elected officials and housing experts to Vienna last October. And the model there is very interesting because they had a lot of the same problems that we have 100 years ago. That they had 30,000 homeless people on the streets, and over the last 100 years, they've created a social housing system, and they have a transportation system that works fantastically. And it wouldn't work. It's different than Los Angeles, but it does provide inspiration and help, and they do it a lot less expensively than we do here. That actually has really started something, and I think they're doing 2 more trips with officials and elected officials and other folks in housing from Los Angeles, over the next few months. And we're having a panel on the Vienna housing model at the Verdi Exchange conference at the end of April, beginning of May, that I think you'll find really interesting. But so as a model, I mean, it takes time to build these systems, but it shows that it's not intractable, that it's not impossible, that you can have a system that can work better. But their social housing system is extraordinary. They have 60% of people in Vienna are renters, not owners. And because they have a system that makes it more attractive to rent, you can, I mean, the rents are controlled, so they're lower. You know, and they can only, you know, you know exactly what the increase is going to be over time. You can even pass your apartment on to your children. So a lot of people who could afford to buy houses prefer to rent because of the attractiveness of the properties, because they're right in the city. It costs them less money, and they're able to use their money for something else. So, you know, that was really the revelation of that trip, is that it is possible to solve these problems.
With the renters, who's responsible for the maintenance, the upkeeps, the taxes, all, you know, basically the landlord responsibilities? Because unless that's also being kept in check, then you could have, you know, multiple generations of families living in one apartment paying the same rent over 60 years. But now the person who owns it, who has to maintain it, pay the taxes on it, pay the mortgages, whatever, they'll go bankrupt.
No, well, many of them are owned by the city. So, you know, so they are supported by taxes overall. And they also, it's been going a long time. And so that a lot of them are owned by what we would call, I mean, they call them limited profit corporations. They're sort of like our nonprofits. But so they're continually developing new properties. And they have, and so they built up these funds over the decades that maintain the properties and that enable them to build new properties. And let me kind of close on one thing that kind of brings these together, is that we also visited something called the International Building Exposition, the 𝐂𝐲𝐵A in Vienna, which is a planning process that they've used in German-speaking countries for the last 100 years that we're trying to do here in Culver City. And in the traditional 𝐂𝐵A, what they do is they take a section of the city or a section of projects, and they give them this kind of special status of being in this International Building Exposition. So they have expedited permitting. They're much more experimental with the zoning rules and the building code, and they let the developers and the architects kind of go wild and build experimental, in the Vienna case, it was housing. In other cases, they're doing one in Stuttgart right now. In other cases, it's other types of buildings besides housing. And it takes about 7 to 10 years, and they build the city of the future, and then they take the projects that are the most successful, and that's how they create the future of their city. That's how they do their planning, by actually experimenting in the real world. Here, we want to do it faster, and we want to do it, and we don't have chunks of the city to use that way. So here we're going to do it in the digital twin. So it will be a virtual 𝐂𝐵A. And we'll invite, architects and developers from around the world to help us imagine what the future of Culver City could be. So I think it is, we are in for change, but Joel, you're absolutely right. It cannot happen fast enough, and we need to be focusing as well on the projects like the one at Culver Palms Church that can happen, as soon as possible. So
that's a valid point. And just to bring everything together, change is hard. It's going to take time. I love the idea of a digital twin, so you can see what it looks like, get a feel for it before actually construction.
Yeah.
That's actually really great. You can also see what kind of energy you're going to use, what kind of water you're going to use, how the shadows are going to be cast. Most people don't think about shadows casting onto green space.
Yeah.
Very important to pay attention to. So everything that you guys are doing at Culver City Forward is encapsulating that, and you're moving forward in the proper direction, which I really love that.
Yeah.
I know there are difficulties. I know, affordable housing is a misnomer almost. It's nebulous. How do we calculate that? And I know Joel is very eager to have more discussions on that. But we don't have the answers. And all we can do is keep trying. And you guys are doing the right thing. So Thomas, if you could just tell people how to find you, whether you're taking donations, volunteers, interactions, anything like that.
Absolutely. So it's culvercityforward.org. And the is our website. And you know, and you'll see us at the Verity Exchange conference for folks that are there too. And you know, I don't know exactly. The Culver City Bounce Forward project has its own website, culvercitybounceforward.org. But it's not quite public yet. I'd be happy to share it with anyone who would write to me and at culvercityforward.org. And I'd be happy to share the credentials so people can kind of try it out. But we're still readjusting it before it goes completely public.
Fantastic. So all the luck to you guys. You guys are doing the right thing. And Culver City is a great little city. You're small, but you punch above your weight. You're doing well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here with you guys again. I look forward to the next time. And in you know, to get further into this housing, you've got to have my colleague Alex Fish, another former mayor in Culver City, who is you know, who is much more of an expert on the details of it than I am.
We will plan that.
We'll get you back for Metro.
Okay.
A good Metro discussion. That'll be great.
Absolutely.
We can definitely talk
Buckle
Metro.
up, kids. Buckle up for that one.
Oh yeah, Joel's going to be on fire.
All right.
Joel will be on fire for that. So, okay, guys, thank you so much. I'm Wendy Nystrom, the host of Environmental Social Justice, with my co-hosts Joy Langford and Joel Vendette. Thank you again, Thomas Small. Culver City Forward, guys, check it out. It's a great organization. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Great. See you next time. Bye-bye.